Hey folks, it's Abby from Abby of Pellinor, and today we're going to be going through the worst books that I read in 2022. Luckily this is a much shorter list than my best books of 2022 for my 5-star reads, so that's always a good thing. But these are all of the books that I read that got 2.5 stars or lower on my core pile ratings. There are 7 books here, an odd number but still. I thought I'd go through them, and let's see if you disagree with me. First up, we're starting with a book that got 2 stars on the rating, and that is This Woven Kingdom by Tahereh Mafi. This was one of the Illumicrate books, one of my first Illumicrate books, and wow. If this is indicative of Tahereh Mafi's overall writing, it's very underdeveloped. The main character continually makes statements and then completely just disregards what she said she's going to do and does the opposite. She has no backbone, no guts, and yet it was oddly compelling. I actually really enjoyed the reading process, partly because the Illumicrate Discord was just full of people ragging on this book. Most of the people on the Discord, at least, did not enjoy this. So yeah, it was a fun time. The concept is there and has potential, but this was just not executed very well. I don't think I'll be reading anything else from Tahereh Mafi in the future. I don't even think I will carry on with this series. Truth be told, I am keeping this because it's pretty. It's my shelves, I can do what I want. Then for a book I DNF'd, and that is 3 Sisters, 3 Queens by Philippa Gregory. This is a historical fiction set in Tudor times, following the older sister of King Henry VIII, who is one of our most famous monarchs here in England. This book and the synopsis on it seem to imply that we're going to be getting 3 points of view. We're going to be getting Margaret, his older sister, as well as Catherine of Aragon, his first wife, and Mary, who I believe is his younger sister. You only get Margaret. You learn about the other 2 through Margaret's point of view. So that was already kind of a letdown, because I'd been expecting something completely different going into this book. And then on top of that, it was just dull. The events themselves were really, really interesting. It was really interesting to learn a little bit more about the Tudor period than, you know, what's generically taught in English schools. If you're English, you already know a fair bit about the Tudors. So it was interesting to learn a little bit more, but unfortunately just her writing style just wasn't there for me. I was sighing as I'm reading this, just sat on the couch, just my boyfriend just looked at me and was like, why are you reading that? You're not enjoying it. And so it was DNF'd. So I ended up giving this one a 2.5 star rating, even though I DNF'd it. It got a higher rating than This Woven Kingdom. Then another one with a 2.5 star rating, and this one is fine, it just wasn't for me, and that is The Book of Mirrors by Chirovici. This was lent to me years ago by one of my best friends, who's essentially my sister, Georgia, and she really enjoyed this, and I didn't. I'm really sorry if you're watching this, I didn't enjoy it. This is a mystery book which follows kind of the trail of facts around this potential murder / death and this story that was never published that should have been. And it had a lot of potential, but it just didn't live up to it. For me at least, I found it dull. I wasn't that intrigued throughout, which obviously is the main thing you want in a mystery. So yeah, unfortunately this one wasn't for me. This isn't one I would actively not recommend, this just wasn't for me. Book of Night by Holly Black. Another Illumicrate book. This one got 1.5 stars. I think this is the lowest rated book on there, even though it wasn't the worst book. The worst book's at the end. This was nothing. This was nothing. This was supposed to be Holly Black's foray into adult fiction. It is not. It is not. It is older YA. 100% it is YA. I don't really like YA too much anymore, so that was already kind of a negative for it for me. On top of that, it does nothing. Like, Go Girl Give Us Nothing is this book. There's nothing to it. It's just, the concept is fascinating. Like the fact that your shadow could be stolen and could be utilised for kind of magic, but it's never really explained properly. I couldn't really tell you about the plot of this book, or about the world, or about the characters. Like, it's just very much nothing. I'm assuming this only got published because it's her name, and that if it had been a debut author, this would not have been published without a lot more editing done to it. There's a lot of potential in this story, but not a lot actually appearing on the page. Then the only one of these that I don't own physically, and that is Awakens by Elise Kova. I was reading this as one of my 12 books in 12 months for 2022. Lots of 2s. And this one had so much potential. It's similar to Book of Night. It had a lot of potential. This one was actually done better. The world building was done better. I ended up giving this a 2-star rating. So there was actual world building there that I enjoyed. The character development, when it was actually developing the characters, was quite interesting, and I really enjoyed that part of it. But a lot of it is just these two people mooning over each other and like, oh, it's forbidden love, but like, it is, just get over yourselves. It was a while ago that I read this, okay, and it made that much of an impression that this is all I can remember. I was just like, fuck off. Like, I'm very particular with my romances, so that won't have helped this book. If you are happy to read any and all romance kind of books, then you will probably enjoy this more than I did. But unfortunately, I just found this grating. It was really, really cheesy. It was like 2013 YA level of cheesy. Is that when this was published? Quite possibly. If so, then it gets a slight pass. But yeah, this sits at 2 stars for me. Then Raging Star by Moira Young. This is the final book in the Blood Red Road trilogy. I think it's called the Dustlands trilogy. This is the most disappointing end to a trilogy I've read in years. Years. There is so much potential here. The first 2 books were great. Blood Red Road, 5 stars. Rebel Heart, I think it was 4 stars. This one ended up being a 2.5 star. The character development is absolutely god-awful. The plot has potential. It's got a lot of good moments in it, but it's never fully utilised. And the world building, although a lot of that has been done in the prior 2 books, there's almost nothing done here to kind of establish these new locations that we're going to. And yeah, the characters is what let this down. They did not act in the way that any of the characters seem like they actually would have acted. Their responses are very weird, their actions are very weird. It is just a letdown, and if you have a look on Goodreads, a lot of people agree this is a very, very poor end to the series, to the point where I'm tempted to unhaul the entire trilogy now. Disappointing. And then, like I said, even though this is not the lowest rated, it is the worst book that I read this year, and that is Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I read this with Carrie from Caring for Books as a buddy read, and we both hated it. So this got 2 stars, so not the lowest. It was Book of Night that got the lowest rating, and that is because there is stuff in here that is redeemable. The amount of research that was done by Follett into this for the historical accuracy is fantastic, and there is some of the character development is done quite well. This will give you a hint of what I'm going to say next, but the male character development is done well. It's not perfect for me, at least, but they do kind of develop over the long span of the book. We follow almost generations, and well, we do follow generations, and so yes, I think that is done well. And I also now know a lot more about building cathedrals than I did before. Didn't realise that this was so heavy on the cathedral building. Like, I knew it was a book that was based around people who were doing that. I expected it to be more about the people and less about the building of the cathedrals. So FYI if you go in. That didn't bring the points down. That's my own fault for not knowing that going in. But I now know a lot more about cathedral building, which has come up surprisingly often. That's actually a positive. That's probably what raised it the half star. I also really enjoyed the depiction of when they went over to Europe. One of the characters goes to mainland Europe, and I enjoyed kind of the traversing of that area of Europe and how that happened. However, Ken Follett cannot write women. I've read Full of Giants by him before, and it wasn't as bad in there as it is in this, although it was still bad in there. I did still mention that in my review of that one. But this is god-awful. He is trying to write a strong woman. He is failing. He thinks that a strong woman is just one who continually plods on despite the trauma, but never addresses her trauma, and provides everything for her family and for those that she loves without really receiving anything back from them. There's also a traumatic rape scene in here. Like, content warnings will be down in the description for anyone who needs them, and I usually don't mention them because I consider them spoilers for myself as someone who doesn't need content warnings. But dear Christ, me and Carrie, both of us, don't really need content warnings, and we checked that each other were okay after we read the primary scene that I'm talking about here. It was awful. It's one of the worst depictions of rape I've ever read in a book, and I read quite dark literature, so that's saying something. It was just unnecessarily violent, excessively so. I found that when I was trying to explain this to any men, they didn't really understand the points that I was making as I was reading through it. Obviously it took us a while, and I was saying like, oh, I didn't like this, I didn't like that, and they didn't fully understand it. So I think that if you are a cis-het man, you will probably enjoy this. Just because you don't have to kind of encounter the everyday misogyny that will make this kind of seem a bit shit. So yes, that's nothing against you, like, at all. Just your different life experience will mean that you are more likely to enjoy this book. However, anyone other than a cishet man, it's going to be an interesting read. Please check all of the content warnings even if you don't normally. It's a very, very graphic book. That's why it's the worst read of the year. It could have been fantastic, but Ken Follett cannot write women. At all. Everything that was wrong with this book was to do with the female characters' points of view. Everything that could have been fixed about this book would have been done to female characters. And it's been a long while since I've read a book like that. This sort of book is why people like to say that they don't want to read books by men. This is what does that. So, I still have 2 more books by him on my TBR. They are more recent than Pillars of the Earth, and also they have an emotional attachment for me. So I will still be reading those, and then I will have read 4, like 1,000-page books by Ken Follett, and I think I will be able to judge him pretty fairly then, but from 2,000-page books, he ain't good at writing women. And excluding Awakens, of course, these are my worst books of the year. Please let me know down below in the comments. Have you read any of these? Do you disagree with my opinions? Did you read some of these and love them? If so, I would love to hear why. I'd love to hear what you think I've missed and the elements that you think that I should have appreciated more. Because no hate, no shade to anyone who loved these books. Like, there is an audience for every single book. There are going to be books that I adored that other people will hate, and that is absolutely fine. That's why we're here as readers. I'd also love to see down below your least favourite books. Let me know in the comments your least favourite of the year. If I had to pick one, it would probably be The Pillars of the Earth, and then the next one would be between Book of Night and This Woven Kingdom, just because they were poorly written. Again, sorry if you loved them. Thank you so much for watching, folks. If you'd like to see any more from me, then the subscribe button is down there, along with all of my socials in the description and the content warnings, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, folks. Bye!